Okay, it's 4:30, so if we want to get started, Nick. Oh, you're muted.
Off to a wonderful start. Hello, everybody. Welcome to our August Educational Cafe. This month, we are lucky enough to be joined by a lot of the key players in the Respite Care Program over at our AOC campus. And just to get everybody familiar with kind of what the idea of that program is, I want to show a brief video about the program and the people in it and who it serves, and then I can introduce our experts for the day. So let me go ahead and share this for you. Does that work?
Healthcare shouldn't stop when you leave the hospital. Making you follow appointments, managing your medication, cleaning wounds, making you more
There's no sound? All right. Well, I guess that we can't hear it. Is that true, everyone? Okay, so I guess we can't hear it. Well, we did have some file type discrepancies right before we got going. So we can maybe just jump right through. It's going to be posted on our Facebook and our YouTube channel immediately following this. So I encourage you all to please go watch it. It's a wonderful video. It really highlights a lot of the respite care work and some of the facilities that are there. But you know what? I think that the best way for us to learn about those, if that's not going to work, is to talk to the people that do it there. So, you know, maybe we can just jump right on in. I apologize for that technical difficulty, everyone. That's on me, none of these experts. So first, I kind of want to just introduce our panelists, and then we can jump right on in. So first, we have David Cisneros. He's the Emergency Housing Director at the AOC. He's the big kahuna over there. We have Kirsten, who's the RCV Program Manager. So she is, helps a lot with the Respite Care Program and the clients there. We have Crystal, who is our our Respite Care Program exit planner. So she makes sure that all of the clients get hooked up with their benefits, housing, employment opportunities, and she's great. And Chastity is a program manager who is really involved with the Respite Care Program and how it runs. And so, you know, I want to just immediately, I guess, stop jabberjawing here and hand it on over to you guys. So can we start with David, maybe go around, introduce yourselves and, you know, just what you do. So David.
Awesome. Thank you, Nick. I appreciate you. Hello, everybody. I'm excited to talk to you all about the Respite Care Program today, and I'm even more excited that we have some of our key staff here to join us to talk about all the wonderful things they do in the Respite Care Program at Heading Home. It's a unique program, and I'm, again, really excited to be able to share what that program is and how it started and kind of how we envision it moving forward in the future, because we believe it's meeting an extremely important need in the community of Albuquerque. So with that, I'll just kind of jump right in with a brief synopsis. The Respite Care Program at the AOC campus, which is currently a men's overnight shelter over on Candelaria in the North Valley, started in a unique way. In our emergency overnight shelter, our men typically stay overnight and they leave during the day. We hope that they go out to take care of tasks that we've given to them to try and sustain permanent stable housing when they leave our shelter. But our men get up in the morning and they board a bus to go to one of the local feeding sites. And one morning we had a gentleman that was staying with us, and he was trying to board the bus, and we could see that he wasn't feeling well and he was extremely weak and was having an extremely hard time going out that day. And we said to ourselves, boy, this isn't ideal. We don't want to send people to the streets that you know, that's not going to be a good situation for them, whether they be vulnerable or there are medical situations that would cause that to be difficult. So we said, how can we fix that? And our first initial inclination was to allow them to stay in for the day to get the rest and recuperation that they might need. But with that, we realized that there are additional needs that come with that. So if they're going to stay at our shelter all day, we've got to make sure that, you know, their basic needs are going to be met while they're staying in house. And so with that idea, the Respite Care Program was born. And so it started with 3 beds way back in 2004 at the emergency shelter, where we were allowing men that were just, you know, sick, had a cold, flu, maybe they've got a sprained ankle or something of that nature, and they just needed somewhere to rest and recuperate during the day. We would allow them to stay in. And with that, we developed the program to start offering additional services. So they stay in the shelter 24 hours a day. We provide all of their meals. We provide their transportation to and from all of their medical appointments. We provide them with intensive case management, which you'll hear about here in this presentation today. And we also, you know, they have access to all the amenities of the shelter, which is, you know, a shower room, a free laundry facility with all their supplies provided. We have exam rooms that allow nurses and rehab folks to come in and provide services directly to the guests. So an example of that is, like, let's say you go to the doctor and they send you home and they say you need to have home health care come and visit you once or twice a day to, you know, do physical therapy or to work on your wounds or whatever the case might be. We have a space for them at the facility where they can meet directly with those patients. They function just like a regular doctor's office, and they get that private space to meet with the guests of the shelter in the Respite Care Program and offer those services. So that's unique because normally if they had a home health care order, they wouldn't be able to discharge from the hospital unless there was a safe place for them to provide those services. And we become that safe place for them to provide those services. We also allow them to do safe medication handling so that their medications are taken exactly as prescribed. We make sure that they're not taking more or less than they should, and that the medications that they're prescribed is actually going to be conducive to their recovery. So we do a good job of making sure that their medications are safe, that they're not abusing medications in the situation where they might have narcotic meds on board. They're not selling them to their friends or doling them out to other people in the shelter. So that control actually, you know, makes it much better for the clients to ensure that their medications are doing their job. And so we offer all of those amenities at the shelter to kind of get a sense of how people are accepted into the program. We do have a referral process and contracts with all of the local area hospitals, including some of our MCO partners, and they can refer clients directly to our shelter for those recuperative care beds. And essentially what it means is they have a place to rest and recuperate. And we're also at the same time, like I said, working on their case management. And if they aren't able to achieve permanent housing while they're in the Respite Care Program, we will help them transition to our emergency shelter so they can continue to work on their housing plan.
Well, dang, you know, that sounds pretty incredible. Like there's honestly a lot going on in that wing down there at AOC. So I want to actually see if we can, first, thanks for sharing, David. I want to hop over to Kirsten and see if she can tell us a little bit about what the day-to-day operations are like, kind of a day in the life for a guest that shows up. But first, I just want to remind everybody watching that if at any point anything you hear gets those gears turning in your head and you have a question, you want to know something a little bit more in depth, just type your questions in chat. If you're on Facebook, type them in the comments, and there'll be some time after that we can answer some questions. So I just wanted to ask you, Kirsten, can you explain kind of what your day-to-day is like there? What's a day like for somebody in the Respite Care Program?
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, the way it really looks on the day-to-day is a lot different than how it, you know, may sound just kind of explaining it. But the way it looks on a day-to-day is, you know, we'll get a referral from the hospital. They'll let us know this is what's going on with this guy. This is why he doesn't have anywhere else to go. This is what he needs. And so we'll go ahead and accept that referral. We'll go through our screening and everything to make sure that they're going to meet the criteria for the program. And then we'll go ahead and accept him into the program. Whenever he gets there, you know, we always try to make sure that they feel as welcome and comfortable as possible, because I know that can be a really scary thing. A lot of these guys have never been in this situation, and so they don't know what they're expecting. You know, they just hear shelter And I know that that's, you know, scary to a lot of people. So whenever they come in, we just try to make it as welcoming and comfortable and safe as possible. We'll get them set up at their bedside, make sure that they have everything that they need. They have their linen, they have any hygiene products. If they don't have that when they get there, make sure if they don't have any changes of clothes that they get some changes of clothes. That way they can shower and everything. We'll get all of their appointments from them. That way I can put it in the schedule so that our driver, we have a driver that works Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. until 4. Transporting to and from any appointments. So we'll make sure and get all of their appointments on the schedule right away. That way we make sure that they're getting their follow-up. And then, yeah, so we just kind of get them comfortable, set in, they'll get their intake that night. But then just kind of on a general daily basis, we'll get up in the morning. We have 4 medication calls that are specific times that we put together for the guys to go ahead and come up and get their medications. We do keep those secured in the office just to make sure that there's compliance there. We bring them in, we'll give them their breakfast when we're doing their medications, make sure that they've got what they need. We'll check in with them at that time too. I like to just see how they're doing, see if anything's changed since yesterday when I talked to them, see if they have any new updates for us, if they got any calls from their doctors, that kind of thing. And then we just kind of go through the day. You know, we have our set schedule of what appointments we have for that day. I'll meet with the driver in the morning. We'll just kind of go over what he's going to be doing that day, what prescriptions need to be picked up for these guys. If we have any changes to appointments, something got canceled, something got added, we'll go over that. The driver makes sure that they're safely transported to and from. And then in between all of that, you know, that's whenever Krista really comes in. She's also during the day meeting with those guys, putting together their paperwork and everything, and working on their housing aspect. And like Nick had mentioned, their benefits and everything like that. So that's another thing that I do is me and Krista will coordinate together to make sure that everybody's getting connected with those services.
That's awesome. And I think a perfect point. Thank you so much, Kristen, for, you know, sharing all of that information. I think this, you know, it'd be great. Maybe Crystal, if you wanted to give us a little bit more detail on what kind of things that do you prioritize in the exit planning process for the Respite Care program?
Well, the first thing I do when we get a new resident is I go, like Kristen said, I meet with her in the morning and we go over who we have. I like to go over and introduce myself to the resident so they can start to feel a little bit more comfortable and they're not so scared, because it is scary, like Christian said, when you first hear shelter. I kind of explain to them that I'll be meeting within the first couple of days, and we'll be creating what's called an individual development plan, and that's kind of like a roadmap of what needs to be done. It gives me an idea of if they have benefits, if they need to get benefits reinstated, if they have a cell phone or if they need a cell phone. It starts us on housing. So at the very least, when they leave, if they aren't going into housing, they're in a way better spot to achieve that goal at the end. And then just make them feel as comfortable as possible. And by the time they leave, usually they're like laughing and happy. It's kind of more, it's more fun to be at work.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't doubt it. And then, you know, just to get us all the way here and introduce and have speak our last panelist expert here, Chastity, I am curious, you know, being a program director and being involved in this program, what does success look like to you for the guests when they exit the Respite Care program? You know, how do you define success?
I would define success depending give or take on a situation, because sometimes we don't know how an individual comes into our program. So maybe for one thing is getting a gentleman getting them set up in the beginning stages of their SSI process, you know, getting them that little tidbit information. So then that way they know how to proceed just in case if it takes longer than expected. Another success could be a gentleman having the right amount of income, so then that way he can get the support he needs getting into some sort of housing situation. or even at that trying to get them into a treatment program. So it all just depends on where the gentleman is coming from when they enter into the program. But as long as we can make at least a small or a big impact on their lives, so then that way they know how to proceed on after they exit from the program, I think every story can be a success story no matter what.
That's great. And I believe it. It sounds like with all the tools you got down there that it's a really good situation. And speaking of that, actually, I was curious if you wanted to share, and this is for all four of you, any stories that kind of gathered. I imagine that you have a lot, but I know that I have some stories, so I imagine that y'all do as well. So, David, do you have any particular story that pops to mind when you think about, like how success is to you?
Absolutely. Yeah, I appreciate you bringing that up and allowing us to share success for the guests. Respite is one of those unique programs that I think every shelter and every service that's provided in the community for people experiencing homelessness is needed. And I think that we can showcase the great work of everyone that does that type of work in our community in a lot of different ways. But I really want to say that this is the type of program that brings a lot of community partners and providers together to accomplish the same goal. And for me, that is an exciting part of the program. And I also look at success as being how is this program serving our community? Not only on the individual level, but on the community level. What impact is it making? And the impact that I feel like it makes on that level is our hospitals are inundated, especially now with the COVID pandemic, right? It can be challenging. I know that I have a lot of moments in my life where I either had to take one of my kids or a family member or even myself to the emergency room, whatever hospital it might be. And how daunting is it when you walk in and they're like, boy, we're going to have you sit in the emergency room for the next 8 hours before we can actually see you, right? And if you're in the emergency room, you feel like your need is emergent. That's the reason why you showed up there to begin with, right? And so when you are sitting there for 8, 9, 10 hours because the hospital is so full of people that they don't have a choice, that's a little scary to me. That would worry me if I have a child that's sick and I really want to go and get them help. And I know that, I might not be seen for 8, 10, 12 hours. There have been times where I've gone to an emergency room and walked away because I said, they're just not going to see us today, right? And I don't want to spend the next 12 hours sitting in this chair. So for me, what Respite does is it allows us to open up more space at the hospitals so that the hospitals can provide better care to your family members, to my family members, and to other members of the community. So when my mom walks in and she has an emergent need, she can get seen right away. So I think we impact that piece of the hospital system in a great way. We take those people experiencing homelessness out of the hospital setting because, something to think about is a night of lodging in a hospital can cost anywhere from $3,000 to $5,000 just for the lodging piece. That doesn't include any of the services that they received. And a hospital is trying to do right by their patients. And they know that they're not going to discharge somebody from their hospital unless they have a safe place to do so. And when you have somebody who's experiencing homelessness in your hospital, that can be a very challenging thing to accomplish. So we allow them a space for them to send those people, and they can feel confident that they're going to get the rest and recuperation they need. They're going to be safe, and that it's going to be a positive discharge. And it also accomplishes a second piece, which a lot of times when people who are experiencing homelessness go to the hospital and receive treatment, then they are forced to go back to the streets after treatment. And a lot of times their conditions will exacerbate. They'll come back, they'll get worse, and then they're right back in the hospital. And that's a frustrating scenario for both the patient and the hospital, right? Yeah. And by allowing them to come to the Respite Care Program, we avoid a lot of those readmissions to the hospital. We keep close eyes on them. So if there is a need where they have to go back to the hospital, we also make sure that happens and they don't, sometimes stay on the street and not go back to the hospital when maybe they should, right? We're keeping that in check for them and we make it easy. Go to the hospital, get checked out, and we're going to save your bed for you, right? They don't have any fear of losing their space in our shelter by doing that. And I think that's a fear that a lot of our guests have is, if I leave here, I'm going to lose my bed. And we're really about trying to create a win-win on both sides, right? We don't want the hospital to be frustrated trying to treat you, And at the same time, we don't want you to be frustrated by the care that you're receiving. So let's make sure that everything works in coordination together so that the hospital, the patient, and the staff at Heading Home are all working in alignment together to produce the best outcome for all of our patients.
Right. You know, that's a really, really interesting and awesome perspective I hadn't actually even really considered when thinking about success for a program like that is community health, you know, and community health is individual health, right? Like, so it's everyone we can take care of helps everyone else. So that's great. You know, that's a really interesting way of picturing that. And then, so I guess moving over to Kirsten, I guess you were next in my line at first. So here you go again. Can you tell us about, you know, a story that inspires you, or what kind of a success story that you really think about, or anything
Yeah,
like that?
you know, I have one that's actually pretty recent. We had a guy staying with us recently that, well, let me just kind of explain the situation. He had a fracture to his ankle, and he just hadn't been getting the care for it. He was on a waiting list to get surgery, but it was going to be a couple months. He didn't have anywhere else to go. He didn't have a way to get back to work because he couldn't be on his ankle. He had some fallout with his family, and so he wasn't able to get support from them. And so he was really just kind of stuck on his own. You know, he actually came to us for our regular emergency shelter program. But we were able to identify that need. We were able to see, you know, this guy should not be going out, right back to our roots, the way it started. We were able to see this guy really shouldn't be walking around on that leg. Let's see what we can try to do. Now, like I mentioned before, the respite guys come to us on a referral basis. And so that's our next step, is to try to figure out how are we going to get this guy a referral. You know, he had been in and out of the hospital. One thing I wanted to say too, with what David was saying, is we also tried to limit the amount of times they're going back to the hospital. And we do that by setting them up with a primary doctor. We do that by getting them other resources so that they don't have to go to the ER unless it's obviously a need. So that's one of the things that we did. You know, we reached out to our liaison at the hospital and kind of let her know the situation with this guy. She was able to kind of push some things around and move some things around for us, which was amazing. And that's another thing I want to point out, is we have built such great relationships with these hospitals. You know, I work with them on a daily basis. We've all become like basically friends, basically like coworkers, you know. And so she was able to do that for us. And that also got us a guy into one of those respite beds. So she was able to get us a referral without him having to go back through the ER and wait for hours. She was able to just kind of push it through. We got him into a respite bed. We got him set up with physical therapy. We got him working on his income, working on his benefits, getting his documentation. Crystal worked really hard with him to make sure he had all of that lined up. And then we were actually lucky enough to get him in through one of our rapid rehousing vouchers. So he was working with our housing director, Dorothy, over at the annex in order to get that done. So he actually was able to get housed under one of those rapid rehousing vouchers, which was absolutely amazing. And he got set up for his surgery. And so he was actually housed before he was able to get his surgery. So he had a place to go whenever he was done with that surgery. He had all of his follow-ups lined up for afterwards. He knew where he was going to go afterwards to follow up with his primary. It was really amazing. And he's still doing pretty well from what I've heard. He's doing really well.
That's pretty incredible. You know, it seems like he met a lot of the perfect people at the right times.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
it's
a lot of times that's kind of how it works out, is it has to be kind of timing, you know. But
well,
we're lucky to have so many resources that we can do that.
yeah, absolutely. Well, and you know, you guys are so good at working together. That seems like that's a great outcome for him or her or that person. I guess it's a men's shelter, so him. Chastity, you know, I know that you see a lot of the outcomes. You see kind of the numbers and the people that come through, and you see all this. So what does the success of the program or a success story look like to you?
The success of this story is trying to get everybody into some sort of housing situation, I believe. So then that way homeless is non-reoccurring and it doesn't happen over and over again. So then that way each of these gentlemen do not fall into the cycle again. So recently, well, it hasn't been recently, but it feels like it's recent, but we did hire on Crystal not too long before the year was over. And prior to that, David was the respite exit planner. And I think David needed a lot of help in that situation. So we did hire on Crystal. And with Crystal being on board and with making a lot of success stories, because ever since Crystal came on board, there has been tons of success stories to where everybody got into some sort of housing situation or into the beginning stages of SSI or SSDI, or getting into some sort of transitional housing program. So then that way everybody ends up leaving somewhere instead of out on the streets, or instead of getting into another emergency shelter housing situation. So since Crystal being on board, I believe we've had a lot of success stories in between all of that, in between all of her hires. And I believe she just got back on too.
Yeah, she did. She just got back. It's perfect timing,
I know.
Crystal. I just Cassidy just really hyped you up. No, I'm just kidding. So, Crystal, it's
Go
okay.
ahead.
I just, I wanted to ask you, because Chastity was just telling us about all of the great work that you've been able to do since you started in that position at the AOC, and I just was curious, kind of what's some of the success that you're seeing in your role there?
I'm seeing, well, there's one story that sticks out particular to me. It was one of my first guests that I worked with. When he first came in, he had been bounced around from rehab facility to hospital to rehab facility, and finally had gotten tired of it and was out sleeping on bus benches and ended up back in the hospital with COPD. So when he came to us, he was real leery. He had been told 10 times that somebody was going to help him get housing, get income, and then he was let down. So slowly but surely, very slowly, I was able to build up trust with him. And by the time he left, working with the Downtown 700 manager, I was able to get him into an apartment there. He had income and he had savings. That's what I like to see. He was
that's incredible.
Success story. And he had warmed up to us a little bit. So that was the good thing. So he was ready for neighbors.
That's incredible, and there's a lot of work that goes into, anybody who's ever applied for an apartment knows how hard it is to get an apartment. Like, it's not easy to get that. You got to go back and forth all the time. It's an incredible amount of work. Yeah. Well, that's excellent. I have a question for you guys as we're getting ready to wrap up here. I think you were so thorough that you've stumped the watchers here. But I have a question. On a year-to-year basis, I don't know how long the Respite Care Program has been operating. It's been part of Heading Home at least as long as me, so at least a year at this point.
Started in 2007, Nick.
2007. So it's legacy. On average, how many? I would say, in a year, if you can, have 30 people in the wing at any given time, how many people exit into a housing situation or, with some form of income, I'm just curious if kind of a percentage roughly. Sure. Or a number.
Yes. You want to take that, Chess, or you want me to? We're both the numbers.
We're both looking for it. You can see us.
So currently we're housing anywhere in between 15 to about 25% of our individuals that do come into the program on a monthly basis. So
Pretty
depending
incredible.
on how many individuals we do get, yes, that's how much we're housing on a monthly basis.
I mean, that has to be way higher than a standard type of shelter arrangement. I imagine that 25% is really high.
Those are good numbers. Yeah, those are good numbers for sure. And we're serving an average of about 250 to 300 unduplicated, which means brand new people, new guests in the Respite Care Program on average annually. And to have about 25% of those people leaving the permanent housing is a good number. But I want you to know that we're striving for 100%. But we realize that we won't probably be able to achieve that goal, which is why we've broken down kind of our case management process into 3 phases, which is and they were talking about this. Phase 1 is about increasing their self-determination. all of the guests that come into our program at AOC campus, whether it be respite or the emergency shelter, I believe can achieve accomplishing phase one. And then phase two is about increasing their skill level or income. That's putting some money in their pocket, whether it be through employment or through disability benefits. And a large number of our people will be able to achieve that goal as well. That's going to be higher, right? So maybe 80 to 90% of our men are achieving phase one, and 50 to 60% are achieving phase two, and 25 to 30% are achieving phase three. And phase three is all about increasing residential stability, whether it be going into permanent supportive housing, market value housing, a treatment facility, or just getting them reconnected with family. A lot of times we're helping them rebuild a relationship so they can go back to live with their wife or with their other family members, which we like to see that happen too. And we do get to hear about some of those stories as well. And I really want to backtrack for a second and point out the guest that Crystal was talking about. She kind of downplayed it in my mind. That guy that
I agree.
I think was an extremely challenging case, like one of those guys that had been through our system for many, many years. And she was the one that created that breakthrough with him that allowed him to finally say, oh, I actually think I can do this. I think I can finally get the help I need and create success. And not only did she help him create that success for himself, but she always remembers that they're the expert on themselves, right? She's taking into account what they want to do and trying to help them achieve their goals. It's not the goals of heading home, it's the goals of the guest. And even after he was housed, when he was experiencing trouble, she went out of her way to go and make sure that he had the help he needed so that he could maintain his housing. And that was, far above and beyond what she was expected to do. And I just want to show that that's the attitude at heading home, is that we will do whatever it takes to create positive outcomes for the people that we serve.
Well, David, thank you so much for that wrap up. And, I know that you guys are doing incredible work over there, because I see it when I go over there. I can see it. It's all over the faces of everyone working there. And it's just it's a great program. We are at our time now, and it's 5:02, so technically we're a little over. But I just wanted to remind everybody watching, whether you're on Zoom or Facebook or later after the fact, if you want to get involved with Heading Home, you want to learn more about the Respite Care Program, you want to volunteer or donate, there are a lot of ways to do it. The best and first step is to go to our website at headinghome.org, and it has a lot of information. And outside of that, you can call us here at the office, and we can get you to, whoever has the information you're looking for. You can donate vehicles through One Community Auto. You can reach out to Kim North, who is our volunteer coordinator, if you feel like maybe after COVID settles down again a little bit, if you'd like to volunteer, or maybe you have skills or service that you'd like to provide for some guests. We're always looking for new ways to help people. But it all starts on our website, headinghome.org. So check it out. I want to thank all of our panelists and Kim for putting this together and sharing all this information, and for everybody for attending. And we will see you guys next month. And thank you, everybody.